Hi everyone. Welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that schedule leaders come across on a day-to-day basis. My name is Greg Lawton, and I'm the CEO of an AI schedule management company called Nodes and Links.
And I'm Micah, a schedule manager for Intel.
Each podcast is designed to give you tips, tactics, and tricks that you can implement right away. Today's challenge is coaching a junior member of the team. And Micah's in the hot seat. Okay, so Micah, you've just inherited an ambitious junior scheduler who's currently on $60,000 a year, and you've had a number of coaching sessions with them. In the most recent one, they've told you that they want to be at $200,000 within 4 years. What do you say?
Say, show me the money. Show me the money. Now, I like this type of ambition in people, but I think to understand where the person's coming from, how I can help this person the best is understand where they're coming from and why they want the 200,000, because that's a very round number, and it seems like they've probably got to that point somehow. So I'd probably start out with saying something to the effect of, why 200,000?
I'm actually going to say that this has been a thoughtful individual. They've actually calculated how much money they need on an annual basis to give them and their partner the standard of life that they're aspiring to. So it's not just
Excellent.
a number plucked out of the air, it's actually thought through.
And then on the time side, why 4 years?
4 years because let's say this individual is 26 and it's by 30 and they've got life plans with their partner that at 30 they want to transition to a different stage of life. So they have to have jigsaw pieces in place by then.
Nice. Well, I think the best part about this is what I tell this individual is totally achievable. I think this is something that most people can accomplish. However, there's probably some sacrifices, or what may be sacrifices made along the way. And let's move forward, and we maybe can touch on some of those as we go. So the first thing I'd say is if they're a junior scheduler and they're making 60K, the first place they would need to start is getting up to being a senior scheduler. Now, the way you get up to being a senior scheduler is a couple different buckets. The first, you need to become very, very strong in Primavera P6. So that's understanding the intricacies of the software, the different ways you use it. And there are loads of video and free content online, but you really, really, really need to dive in and understand that tool. The second piece that you need to understand and pick up on to become a senior scheduler is the process and principles of scheduling. So what that will help you do is understand how to use P6 correctly. In what instances should you use this float calculation versus that float calculation? Or in what instances should you have a very detailed schedule and a very high level schedule? And then the third bucket that you need to pick up is just understand the industry you're in, the means and methods of construction. So whether you're in highways or data centers or whatever it is, high-rise buildings, becoming more technically sound on understanding this is how these buildings are put together. Those three pieces equal you being able to have more impact. And so I would first coach the person on, hey, I see you're really a strong P6 person and you really are starting to understand the principles of scheduling, but you're not picking up how we commission HVAC or how exterior construction is going together. You seem to be more inward into yourself, into the data, not outward. Because to get from junior to senior scheduler, you need to deliver impact. You need to be able to come back to your manager and say, listen, I've analyzed this schedule and I figured out a way to save us money. And so that would be the first. Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna jump in there and I'm gonna act like this individual, and for some reason you want to help me because I'm going to be quite prickly. So two things. Number one, well, I understand there's a stepping stone to get to 200K. What would pay me 200K? And my second question, it just slipped out my head. 1 second. I'm going to think of it. It is.
Well, we can do the first one because maybe
Let's do the first one so I remember the second.
I think what the person's asking is, great, Micah, show me the backwards pass. You're
Yeah.
starting to go down the forward trajectory, and that's interesting. But walk me through the backwards pass to let me know if the juice is worth the squeeze. Most positions that you're going to be in that are 200K plus are either going to be owner schedulers or high-end positions at general contractors. So to focus on that, there's typically in a compensation package at high-end GCs or owners, it's going to be broken out into other than just salary. And I think that's one thing that people probably need to understand.
Talk me through that.
Yeah, so you have what most people get is salary. So this person's probably getting paid a straight 60K, but you also have a bonus. And so as you get to bigger companies, they'll make a percentage of your salary goes into a bonus. And so I think the magic number for 200K is probably around 130, 140 salary. Because if you're making 140K in salary and you have a 25% bonus, that's going to get you up to 175K in salary. And then the third component is equity. And so some of these companies you work for, like if you work for Google, a Facebook, or Meta, or a Microsoft, are going to pay you equity to subsidize or balance out your salary. And so if you got to 170 in salary, it's safe to say that they'd also do somewhere around 25-ish percent, 20% in equity. And that would get you north of 200K. And so that's probably the space you want to be in. And so again, top GC scheduler or top owner scheduler is going to be a position to get over 200K. To land one of those, you have to be top of your game as a senior scheduler. Resume wise, they're going to want to see you as a top leader in scheduling. Now, there's a variety of roles there, which would make this very nuanced to what the person wants to do. But, in general, you're just going to have a resume that fits one of those companies. And that's, a top end scheduler.
So I've just remembered that was actually my second question, which is, I've actually heard that in senior scheduling, there's many different flavors of senior scheduler. So I've heard of people who do forensics. I've heard of risk people. I've heard of senior delivery schedulers. I've heard of people that sit in the head office who set out functional excellence guidelines. I've heard of consultant schedulers. I've heard of a lot of flavors. Isn't scheduling just scheduling?
No, and that's an excellent opportunity for you, because if you look at all of those pathways you just mentioned, in each of those pathways, there's a pathway to over 200K. I'm just speaking about the one that is most probably likely, since we're sitting, I would just say we're sitting at a top GC or a top owners program having the conversation. Those other routes also have top end schedulers. Like your top end consultant forensic schedulers get paid well north of 200K per year. Your top end director level consultants schedulers also get paid there as well. And we're not even mentioning just the Oracle database side, which you can transition into. Database administrator for Oracle Primavera P6, senior one or a manager of them, well north of 200K. So the beauty is you have this, what I would call this branched out tree, where you start from a junior scheduler. Your next probably best step is a senior scheduler, but then it branches out. And it really comes down to what interests you, in my opinion, of the scheduling world. Because whatever interests you is going to keep you motivated and push you through all the way up and make you keep going because you're very interested in it. And that allows you to choose. And so I would ask the person back, what are you interested in?
Right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this a little bit. Okay, so let's say you've said all of that, and there's many routes we could go down here. We could talk about, big things that you'd recommend in addition to learning the job, etc. But let's go down this route. Okay, now I want 500K. What pays 500K, and how do I get there? And how would I find that out myself? It's almost like give a man a fish, etc. Teach me how to fish. I want 500K. What do I do?
There's two ways to get to that sort of level. One is own your own company. And so you can either do that through consulting or creating something, software, of that
Mm-hmm.
mix. The other way would be getting into executive level management. And so for large companies, you might get there at a director level, but you most likely have to get there at a VP level. And at that level of money, I think what people don't understand is that there are sacrifices and trade-offs for it. And those sacrifices and trade-offs typically become your time. So if you're also in the original question, going back to the original thing where they're like, this maintains my status of life, at 200K, oh, great. I have this, 40 to maybe 50-hour a week job, depending on what flexes. And I get to spend all this time with my kids and all my needs are met. And we're going on all these vacations. Cool. You want to go to that 500K level, you may not see your kids and family anymore. Just a fact of life. Some of these positions require a ton of attention, ton of time. People just expect you to work those hours. So now you got to make the call. Hey, is that extra 300K per year worth it? And some people will be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, for sure. And some people won't. And so that's one. And it also gets to be a higher risk proposition. I don't think people think about this as well. Starting your own consultancy is risky. Starting your own business is risky. Get to the corporate ladder, there's only so many shoots up that path. And then it becomes a bit of a popularity contest. And so it may or may not work out. But that's what I tell the individual. And to get up there, you're going to need a whole load of different skill sets. Also, to launch your own company, as you know, Greg, you're going to need a whole load of different skill sets than just what scheduling has. And so my recommendation, if that person really wanted to go there and they're making 60K right then, is let's work you to the 200K and let's start adding some of those skill sets, which will help you also get to the 200K as you go. So figure out how to, if you want to eventually own your own business, figure out how businesses work. That starts with you learning how cash flow and cost works on a project, because how cash and cost works on a project, ballpark, is how it works in a business, right? Oh, you want to be a VP executive? Well, you're going to have to lead teams. So how do we build leadership talents and skills and opportunities for you as you go up the ladder? And so it's interesting. I mean, there is quite a ton of skills that if you wanted to shoot for the 500K, you could pick up along the way on your journey.
So I'll pick up on that point there. So in the years I've been doing this, what I've found is that there's this general view that to progress in a career, you have to essentially end up in management. And I've thought deeply about this actually, and it's one, it's not true in all situations, but it's true enough that it's become the general rule. And the reason is leverage, and it's just purely leverage. So the amount of work that you, Micah, could get done with 10 people working for you if you effectively manage them is far more than the amount of work that you could do on your own. You don't have 10 times more hours in the day. It's just purely leverage at that skill. Now, the one area, and I'd love for your opinion on this, the one area where I have actually seen people get to 500K as an individual contributor, not in executive management, is forensics.
Yeah.
Delay and claim analysis and representing companies in court.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a really good one to point out. I mean, when I've seen hourly rates of $400, $500, $600 per hour plus, it's that. There's a bit of training to get there, but once you're a senior scheduler and you have that amount of training, it's very, very possible, and it's a totally doable career. And I completely agree. That is one avenue where highly recommend people check out if it fits what they want to do and their personality and things like that.
I have noticed that there's a specific personality of forensic planners. Normally very, very good at commercial negotiations.
Yeah,
say that.
Absolutely. But so here's the thing, though. I would rewind a little bit back for people who are in that, well, you've kind of given us the roadmap, but you haven't given us the tactics, right?
Yes, well, that was going to be my next one, which is cool.
Okay.
You've told me the 200. You've told me the
We
500.
finished our backwards past.
Yeah, we've finished the backwards pass. I'm a junior scheduler sitting in front of you. I'm back in that role now. Awesome, Mr. Micah. What do I do next?
Yeah, I think the first thing is let's hash out a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan. And I know you put a cap on 4 years, so maybe we call it a 1, 2, 4 plan. And because we got to starting to bound uh, how you are going to then go out and achieve this goal, because that's all it is. It's a goal. You want to get from point A to point B, so we need to put some bounds on it. So we need to look at in 1 year where the person needs to be, in 2, 2.5 where they need to be, and then 4 where they need to be to land that last job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I would start out with saying. In 1 year, how can we get you from the junior scheduler you are to the top senior scheduler in the company? And that can seem like an impossible mission, and but it's not. We just need to lay out how they're going to get there. And so to me, that comes through opportunities. How can we get that person opportunities to excel, to show that they're ready to be promoted from junior and senior scheduler? And that's going to be not just the physical work, but also the leaders in the company and where they're working to provide feedback to get them to that level. And so, first off, the first thing I would say is, what can you go lead today? What is something that you can take over from somebody else and go lead that would help them out? More often than not, status meetings are a great place to look. I would say most people probably don't want to run and manage status meetings. That's where I got in. When I first started at Google, I took over a project review meeting, and it got me FaceTime in front of the directors and the VPs. And all I did was just manage this meeting. I would run the agenda. I would make sure we stayed on time. I would take good notes. And now you got some FaceTime. Simple as that. Zero, like literally almost zero impact, but you have the FaceTime so the people know you. And that way, as you bring something up that is impact, like, hey, I think we should go add nodes and links on as a scheduling review software, it's going to save thousands of dollars. You're not just a random face and random name. Oh, it's Micah from that meeting. Yeah, he seems like he's, And so
I would actually stop and challenge you there about the no impact element. The skipping out of the junior scheduler and going to my normal position. Some of the highest paid people in venture capital blow my mind with how well they chair meetings. That is one of their unbelievable skill sets. And I'd say, like, most people would never come across an individual who can properly chair a meeting. And if you can, it's just a skill. So, for example, going, Micah, sorry to interrupt. You've been speaking for 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Could you please just succinctly summarize the 2 bullet points, because I need Greg to go and make his points before we conclude this element of the agenda. You can. It is worth its weight in gold. So
yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree. And then in a more practical sense, you need to be able to run a baseline schedule review or some sort of schedule review. 30, 50, 100 people in the room. You're going through a schedule. There's going to be disagreements, and so you can build that skills. And so year 1, I would look at what can we add for opportunities to get that promotion. What does that promotion packet look like? Is it a formal process at companies? Is it a non-formal process? But how can we build your package up to get you promoted as fast as possible? And I think that's that. And then when I look at year 2.5, 2.5 is gaining that experience as a senior scheduler that's going to get you the leap into that higher end GC position or that higher end owner's position. And again, it's going to follow the same process we talked about before, but it's just going to be more meat on the bone. So we're going to look for things that give them the opportunity to shine in those skill sets that are resume patterns. When you're building out your resume, you got to be able to say, I improved this by 18%. I saved the company $20 million. And that's actually a really good point that we haven't discussed is as you go through this journey, because that's where you're ultimately going, you better make darn sure that everything you're doing, you are recording. every time you have a win, you're noting it down. You have some sort of system to catalog it, because it'll make your lives a zillion times easier to be able to then create that resume that you want at the end. And then the other thing is, as we go through that process from senior scheduler to getting that 200K job, we want to find things that make you stand out from the crowd. So, I do a lot of schedule interviews. I've interviewed tons of people. I get people on, and there's nothing unique about them that lets me know that they're going to greatly impact the business. Every single person can recite for me the PMI. It's like SPI is this, CPI is this. To build the schedule, first you meet with the stakeholders, you get their input. Yeah, I get it. I'm glad. But you're now in a league where that is the base, and people don't want the base. They want the special thing, the extra thing. So do you have extra computer programming skills? Do you have, can you speak a foreign language? I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on, depending on what it is and what you're looking for.
Let me challenge you on that, because I'd like you to pin one to the wall here. Pin one to the wall, and I'd say you have to pin one to the wall. And I'll give you context here. So, in my experience, serendipitous skills are the most valuable, which are skills that don't normally go together. And I'm not talking here like piano recitals and scheduling, irrelevant. What I mean is, for example, what I say to most schedulers is you need to learn contracting. Because if you can go in and go, I'm not a scheduler, I'm a person who makes you money. I just so happen to use the schedule to do that. That is crazy unique. With engineers, it's generally sales skills, because they know how to design, they don't know how to sell. So what would be the one that you'd pin to the wall and say the serendipitous skill that they need to learn?
And there's so many. And I think there's, when you said like piano, I mean, when there's teachers that are, I'll give you two, but I want to just give one for the crowd to let them know how it's not easy, but how achievable this is to go from a junior scheduler to a senior scheduler. Even something like being a teacher, like an elementary school, middle school teacher, you have skills that you brought in that makes you interesting. I would see that on a resume and be like, oh, that's interesting. This person can herd cats. They can manage a group of crazy people. They probably have great organization skills.
Very emotionally stable, probably.
Very emotionally stable. They're used to dealing with people who are not emotionally stable.
Yep.
And that would actually strike me as interesting. So that'd be, I wanted to give that example just because I feel like there's probably a lot of people out there who are like, oh, how do I do this? I don't know. The one that I would pin to the wall now that I think is easy to pick up and highly useful is any sort of programming skills that you can pick up. Yep. On the simple side, SQL, Power BI, Tableau, on the more complex side, getting to know Python and anything else like that. I'm constantly looking for individuals who have that complementary set of skills, because when you get to the owner's side, you're dealing with large programs with large data sets, and we're looking for trends over that period of time through those projects. And if you can program, you're a programmer who just happens to schedule, or whatever you said, Greg, that was amazing earlier. That'd be one I would pin to the wall.
Beautiful. I love that. I have to say that I talk to probably not thousands, but hundreds of executives per year, and I have to say the massive trends I get in the market right now is, what is AI in this data thing, which is the programming thing that you're talking about there, and I need more money. It's basically the two things that people want.
Yeah. And I think, to sum up, or not to sum up, but the last point of going from senior scheduler up is, or throughout your journey, is you're probably going to have to leave the company you're at a certain point in time. And that's just a fact of life.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, it's just, to me, it's a little bit how companies work. I mean, there are a few percentage or a decent population that is able to climb all the way up. And if you're able to do that, great. But for this individual, if they're on a 4-year timeline and they go 1.5 years, they pick up all those skills and there just isn't that opportunity available, then why would you sit around and wait for it? Because you could leave and go get that opportunity elsewhere. And so going back to remember I said sacrifices, I would say, are you willing to move? Because if you're not in a hot construction area and you're just doing one project in this area and you're not willing to move, you may have to wait till those opportunities open up and you might not hit your 4-year plan. And so moving companies, you will get a bump in salary typically, and you will get a bump in role potentially. And so if you finish your junior scheduling and there's no senior scheduling positions available, you can get on LinkedIn right now. And senior scheduler is literally the hottest job, I would say, in construction to date. You can find a job in any major metro across the world, and there are loads of them. Go onto our Start Milestone newsletter, sign up. I send 3 out every single week. I'm trying to find an area where there's not scheduling, and I simply can't. Like, I haven't tried Antarctica yet, just because I don't want anyone to go there.
No. There is an Antarctica, because I'm actually on one of the Antarctic projects. No, there is.
Yeah,
they don't have enough schedulers.
I go all over the world: Australia, Asia, Europe,
Australia's
Middle East,
like got a 50% deficit. Yeah,
Africa,
Middle East,
Europe, America, Latin America. Yeah. I mean, it's the senior.
I'm actually trying to think of one.
No, you won't find one.
It'd have to be a country without a running government. It'd have to be something that's just.
You wouldn't want to go work there, right?
It's basically war torn or something like that.
Yeah. And so then, I mean, so there's going to potentially be, you have to depend, what's best for you and your family? Is it right to move, to go chase this dream, to go get it? Or does it make more sense to stay there? I would say for most people in construction, I would definitely at least put your toes in the job market every 3 to 4 years. Even if you're not going to take the job, just to go see how much you're worth, because salaries have just gone crazy. And so if you set at a company and for 3-4 years, salaries everywhere go up around you, you're missing out on potentially a lot of money that it could even just be a lateral transfer that you missed out on. And then, one other thing I didn't mention is there's a lot of techniques around landing jobs, and we're getting long on time here. And so I don't want to go.
So I'll wrap up that, stick a point, and we might have another thing on how to coach someone how to land a job.
Yeah. Let me just give the last thing on this is the thing I see people who apply to those high-level jobs. I used to work at Google. I work at Intel. I interview a lot of people for these jobs that pay $200K plus. You just need to prepare. You need to rehearse. Please take all the interview questions you can find on scheduling. I'll be posting some through my newsletter on Zero Float. Find interview questions and rehearse. If my friend is Greg, I'd say, hey, Greg, I have these scheduling interview questions. Run me through them. Let me answer them. I've had candidates, amazing resumes, seem like they could be perfect fits, get on the interview, and for 15 minutes when I was like, tell me about yourself, they just ramble. Or I ask, hey, what are some of your favorite schedule metrics? And they say CPI, SPI. And it's just silence after that. And they just bomb. And I'm sure they're great schedulers and they're very capable, but an interview is a performance and you need to be able to perform. And the best way to perform is to practice. So that's the one thing I would lead, because as you start to go there, your interview and your resume and your package, that's what's going to get you the 200K job.
And I'd definitely say for one of these 200K jobs, I'd be getting into the point of saying, so what would you suggest for us to improve our scheduling practices? I would fully expect them to know what my scheduling practice is. And people might go,
do your homework.
Well, how am I going to contact someone on LinkedIn instead of apply for a job at your company? And I'd love just to find some things out. Call them up and say, how is it there? What does the amount of people that just go, I have no idea.
I did an interview once for a electric car company. And one of their competitors, people flew drones over their buildings every single day. I went in and watched about 7 to 8 hours of drone videos, and I figured out how you build an electric car manufacturing facility. That way, when I went to the interview, I was dialed in. I was ready to go. And so if you're not willing to go to that level, you're not willing to do that research, you're not putting yourself in a position to win the job.
I know we've got to think of the numbers in these things, because it's, that sounds like a lot of effort, but it's like, okay, so you watch 6 hours of videos. That 6 hours, let's say you had a lot of prep time. So let's say you added another 4 hours, that 10 hours. If you were on 150K and you were jumping to 200K, 10 hours to get a 50K pay bump, it's pretty straightforward.
Think about it. You watch 2 hours of TV per night, flip those videos on 1.5x. It's just a couple nights of watching it. I'm taking notes while I'm doing it, it's a no-brainer. And so that's the last point I'll leave y'all with is, as you start to get to that level, you have to think about your resume and your interview, and you have to be really dialed in and ready to go.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Micah. As a junior scheduler, I'm very excited now about putting my plan together and coming to show you it on Monday morning and seeing what you think. And I'm going to dive straight in and hit the scheduling skills and the management skills that you suggested, plus thinking about these other areas. Before we finish, any final thoughts that you want to give to anyone?
I just keep an eye out for Zero Float. We're going to be publishing some articles on this very subject. So if you need more tactics and tips and tricks, we're going to go in depth.
Beautiful. Right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.